Okay, welcome to the stream. Um, let's just get this on. Yep, let's get started. Today's stream is about the eternal contrast and the eternal life. That's the video that I sent out, and I have linked it in the chat. So let's start. I have made an agenda, which is how I work. So here we go. Today's stream. It's not gonna be a whole hour because I have something I have to do, but we'll get into it. So let's get started. Keep it like 1 second. Just move myself right there. Here we go. I'm practicing a little bit how to do these things, but it will work out fine. Let's try one thing. Yep. So we'll go into this week's video, what it's about, just walk through it. That's a few questions, so we'll go into them. And then let's see, I have some thoughts about the channel. That sort of, I think I even have a QA session, I just left it out there. So that's what we're gonna go over, and yeah, half an hour, something like that, depending on what happens. It's still sort of practice runs with all this stuff and just see is it sustainable, and I'll come back to that in the second part of this. Anyway, this week's video. Show what happened there. It's about contrast and what the effect, how that, yeah, contrast and eternal life, how we can use principle of contrast to show or to make it more plausible that we have eternal life. So that's what the video is about. So I'll start out by talking about what contrast are, and I think most of us know what it is, but it has a little bit deeper meaning that we usually think of when we talk about contrasts. Also what their functions are. So let's just start out by talking about what a contrast is in the first place. And let me just do one thing for 1 second. That's just gonna hide what I'm drinking. Some of you might know. Anyway, so what is a contrast? Well, we know it. There we go. Black and white is the example I use in the video, and it's pretty straightforward. It's all about yeah. If you have something white and you put it on a white background, you cannot see it essentially. So you need some kind of marking or definition or distinction is the right word between what you have to see and the surroundings, basically. So if you put something white on a white background, you cannot see it, like with the letters we have here. If they were white, you couldn't see it, right? So you need something other than white in order to see it on a white background. And in this case, we have black letters, so we can actually see them. And of course, a lot of nuances, like the line in the bottom of the screen. Don't think you can see it actually on broadcast anyway, but a lot of other colors that are different from right, you will be able to see them as well. So that's a contrast, right? And you need that in order to see or perceive a thing. But Martinus takes it a step further. He actually goes into saying that it's the whole thing in life. It's not just our physical perceptions, what we see and hear and so forth. It's also the mental part of it. So love and hate, happiness and sorrow and so forth. Also contrast that has to be there in life in order for us to perceive them. So yeah, so that's happened, and when he takes it to the first, it's also about a contrast between something that's timely and eternal. So we also need that contrast in order to experience that part. Yeah, it was here. So essentially, that applies to everything that we can perceive, yeah, in life. So what does that have to do with eternal life? Well, the point is that if you have something you experience right now, it has to be on the background of something you have experienced before. So if you want to experience something that is black, you need some prior experience of something that is white. And then the argument is essentially that, okay, so if you have a black experience now, you want to experience something black, you need a prior experience of something white. That white needed something black, and that black needed, you need a prior experience of something that is contrast to some extent at least. It doesn't have to be like a full black and white, but it can also be in between, right? So you need a prior contrast in order to experience anything. As a general statement, you need a prior experience to experience now. So the question is, and it's a bit rhetorical, is essentially what would be the first experience. Obviously, if you always need a prior experience to experience anything, it has never started. It's pretty straightforward in that sense. Of course, there can be a whole discussion on whether that's actually the case, but that's the logic here, and that we experience right now. It's pretty simple in math. It's I'm not sure I translated correctly, but it's essentially an induction proof. So you prove the state you're in right now, and you prove the next step, and the next step after that is the same thing or a similar thing. So if you have proved the first step, you have proved all the steps essentially. So it's the same structure you have here. We know we are alive right now. We know we are perceiving something, whatever that is. And if the statement that you need a prior experience to experience, well, then it has never started, right? We're not going into how and why that can be the case, but it's just it has never started really. So so that's the idea here. What I don't talk a lot about in the video is actually the other way going forward. And I'm not sure you can make maybe you can actually say that if you have it, well, the idea is essentially if you have an experience right now, another one will come after that one. And if you can prove that in some ways, you have basically said that there will always be an experience going forward as well. I don't go a lot into that. And I think in order to argue for that, you need something a little bit different actually. I think it will be more like the analysis of the living being that I would say Martinus's idea would probably be that, you have the I, the ability to create and created. I have to look into whether those are the right terms, the translations, but anyway, and essentially you go towards saying go through an analysis that shows that these three principles that makes up a living being, they're essentially, there's something that there is, and this something there is cannot come out of nothing. That's the argument. So the eye that sort of directs what's going on with the living being cannot. That's the analysis of the eye, our eye, and I do something, is essentially that it's just something there is. There's no details to it. So and that essentially means it doesn't change. So if that something doesn't change and it's there, we talk about it all the time. It's not going to if it's there and what it is, but let's just assume that something there is that we know as our eye in the living being. That eye has it cannot change. Essentially, it's something there is. That's all it is. So that eye has essentially. I mean, how can it come out of nothing if it cannot change? So with that logic, it has always been there and always will be there. And you can say the same for the ability to create, right? You cannot go into, as soon as you go into, if you're not, you can describe it as something there is, something eternal. The ability to create is, and according to Martinus, is an eternal ability the living being has. So essentially, if you take it, I mean, that is actually something that in the concrete are changing to some extent in some ways. He describes it as, I mean, we have to create it that we know has changed, a movement, but the ability to create the X2, as he calls it, that's also changing, right? We have our talents, they are changing. That's actually our ability to create is obviously changing over time. But that's a movement as well, but it's a different movement than they created. I kind of sidetracked myself here, I think. Anyway, it's a movement, but it's at the end of the day, it's also something X2, or the ability to create, is something we can describe as something there is, and it's the same. And the argument here is essentially that you cannot describe the eternal ability to create as other things. That's something there is. I mean, you can say right now, this living being has the talents to be an animal or a real human being or something like that. But then you're into the specifics or the more timely part, I would say. So that would not be a complete description of the ability to create, because you have to leave something out. That would be, again, contrast. In order to be an animal, for instance, that's a living being. It has an eye. It has the ability to create a situation where it expresses itself as an animal, and it has its talents for that. But if you describe the living being as an animal, that would only be, or the ability to create is to create an animal. That would only be a sort of a slice in time and not the whole thing. So that would not cover the eternal ability to create. It will only be a part of it. So it will not be a complete or full description of that ability to create. So the only way we can describe the ability to create is with something without details, and that's again something there is. And if it doesn't change, if it has no details, and it's there, we can see from our daily life. I mean, I can here do this live stream, so it's something there is as well. So in that case, and again, if it's only something there is, it cannot change. So how has it started if it doesn't change? So that will be there all the time, both back and forth from the now we're living in. And the same applies to the created. You cannot describe it as the manifestation of an animal or something else. You have to describe it with everything there is, and that leaves no detail basically. So you have to go for a description where the created is something that is, and this is an eternal or absolute view on the living being. Then you can go into all the relative stuff where things are changing, and Martinus talks about going within life, and that's a different story. Anyway, that would be my argument that contrast never ends, or life never ends, but that's a little bit of a different argument than the one that is in the video. So let me just do one thing offline. I need to look at this, see what happens here. Nothing happens here. Anyway, doesn't matter. Just trying to figure out my statistics and how all this stuff is working. Maybe I can do it like this. See if that makes a difference. Anyway, I'm just testing a few things while we're at it. So yeah, so that's it. Should probably have been in the video to discuss whether we ever stop our lives essentially, but anyway, doesn't matter. So also go into, it was mostly for fun, go into the chicken and egg problem. What comes first, the chicken or the egg? Yada. And the main thing here is that it's essentially a wrong question, because none of them comes first. It evolves out of something else. So I know chicken and egg is used for other things, how you get things started, but essentially it's also this real valid question. What actually came first, right? And when it comes to life, it never started, right? So whatever form we're in right now as living being, it didn't just start out of nothing. So there's no real, it's the wrong question essentially. So you should ask, instead of asking what comes first, the chicken or the egg, it's essentially where did they evolve from? Because both of them are there in some ways, right? Anyway, and I'll also go into a bit of a talk about how the chicken and the egg is actually contrast, so we can experience them, which is kind of thing that I figured out when I made the video, that we actually, I mean, there's a born unborn thing, there's an adult, well, an egg is not a child, but anyway, there's a being physical alive and not physical alive, and I mean there are lots of contrast in there, so you can start looking into that. That actually makes up the experience of that, and that actually also shows that none of them started out as the first one. So here's one of the things that I like to at least think a little bit about, and that's so is all this stuff science in a way? Is it actually truth? And I would say, I don't know. Maybe I'm a little bit too tired to answer that right now. I think, yeah, it's a huge question. Is the logic enough? What is science in the first place? All those kind of questions that comes into it. It's one of the things I would like to come more back to and talk more about in later occasions, and I'm sure we will do that. So I think, did my video just die? I think it did actually. Just started again. Here we go. Just trying to figure out how things works right now. I'll come back to science in another time. It's too much of a discussion right now. Can we move on? Q&A. I think that was the video. Go and watch it. It's yeah, it's worth watching. So, I'm sure it sounds. You can hear what I'm doing when I'm going off. Do we live forever? Are we going forward in time? I think I already answered that one, but that was one of the questions. Yes, but yeah, feel free to ask in descriptions, and think I'll get back to that in a second. Yeah, so I think we already discussed that pretty much. So yeah, I want to keep this a little bit short. So let's just talk about the channel. A few things. I actually made a plan for the rest of the year for the videos. So I have at least have a plan that I can stick to if I want to on about what plans are, or what the videos should be. So right now I work week to week, and that's a little bit rough. So I'm trying to change that so it's sustainable. So the idea is basically still to do one video, like long video, send that out and do this live stream. I might also do some shorts. It's yeah, based on the videos that are out there. That's doable. So the plan is made, and of course it can change, and there are also some good ideas in there for next year. So I have a detailed plan for this year, and I have a rough plan for next year. So the idea is really to commit to that, and it also goes into this one. I think YouTube is probably, they say it's the hardest social media to work with, because it's such a long-term thing. It really takes a long time to convince Google that YouTube should show your videos. There are so many videos they can bring and put in front of their viewers. I mean, there are literally a billion users every day on YouTube, but YouTube are only interested in showing what they believe is the best thing to show their viewers, and it just takes a long time to convince YouTube that they should show your videos. So it's keep trucking. In the game, and yeah, they say 100 videos, and that's one a month. That's a 2-year thing. Hoping to go a little bit faster, but who knows? There's so much stuff to learn, and it's pretty cool, and I kind of like it. no matter what. So anyway, um, I'll start to broadcast, you can say, or just inform a little bit broader about the channel from 1st of September. For different reasons. That's just the day I picked. I think I just needed to clarify a few things about the purpose of the channel. Especially, I've made and the channel page. That's where you can see the overview of all the videos and playlists and so forth for the channel. I changed the graphics a little bit. I think the main viewers of this channel, or the one I want to talk to or relate to, is essentially people who want to look for or find a truth out there. They've kind of given up on religion because there's no logic in it, basically. Well, I mean, it can be the truth, and there's definitely some truth in that, but it's not explained. So you have to be able to believe it. And if you cannot believe it, you're just stuck. So then it's just too bad, right? So that's one thing. And then if you become more a scientific person, and I guess that's where I'm coming from, so that's what I'm talking to primarily, then you can go into materialistic science because that's what you can experience, and you need facts, right? That's sort of the idea here. So it's for people who want facts in a way. That's something I need to fix. I don't know why my stream deck started acting up today. Anyway, where was I? I was talking about completely lost the where I was. Anyway, again. Yeah, I'm actually running the slideshow. Anyway, apparently it really wants me to log into Twitter for some weird reason I don't understand. Yeah, I have to try to figure out how to. Oh, it was who is actually the audience. Yeah, so people who are kind of lost, you can say, run out the need for investigating the material part of the world. That would probably primarily be, it could be science, right? But it could also just be hunting down money or wealth or something like that, or whatever flavor being a materialistic person comes in. So the idea with that is essentially that you dig into that and you start looking for it, and probably in the beginning it's just great and fun and everything, but at some point you start to figure out that it might not be sustainable, right? If life hits you with bad things, whatever that might be, your money or your wealth or fame or whatever, just doesn't help you. So at some point you start asking, so is there more to life than just chasing money or the opposite sex or whatever you're into? Then you might start wondering, so is there more to life, right? And that's where you start to be a real truth seeker. And I hope there are enough people out there to actually make this channel work. So that's the journey we're embarking on in this channel. And yeah. So that has made some changes to a few things. I think it can focus the videos much better. No, start scratching all the time, which is annoying. Anyway, so yeah, I had to figure that out a bit better. I think in the beginning here, it's been about just getting some videos out and get some experience and figure out what I don't know about and those kind of things. and I'm learning every video, put some extra on it. I figure out that there are things that I don't know enough about and so forth. There's always room for improvement. Long list, and I'm just gonna take it from what is the most valuable to do and what I think is funny to do. Anyway, so a bit more broader information. That means I have some channels to run information in on mail list, Facebook, Instagram, and so forth. And I'm also planning on making some shorts on YouTube, and we'll see what happens. I give it a month in September, and who knows? I have no idea. Right now there are 9 subscribers. Maybe we have 10 5 weeks from now. I think it's a little bit more, but at least I hope. But who knows? Yeah, so that's that. Working on improving the sound. There are some reverb, whatever it's called, echo. After I moved to a new room, and I have a few ideas. I just have to fix it. So I hope that will happen next week. At least the first part of it, and then I have a few more things. I hope if that's probably not gonna solve the whole thing, but it's gonna solve some of it. And then I might have something in the background next week as well. So we'll see. Maybe Martinus books will be there on a shelf or something like that. I don't know. Let me just see. It's 1:47. I'm standing up all the time, by the way. It's here. 1:47. Yeah, you will be able to see it. So that's cool. And, yeah, anyway, I'll shot next week's video. It's gonna be, yeah, it's gonna be fine. I think that's what I had for today. It's kind of hope during the next 5-6 weeks there might be some actual viewers here. That I think that's gonna be next step for all this. But I really have not told anybody about this, so for now it's been a solo thing. But of course, at some point there has to be some more people than just me here hanging out. It won't make any sense. So, but that's fine. So I will say enjoy the weekend, and see you next time. Thanks for watching if you're still hanging out.